At what point do you consider yourself a bad person? That was the question I was considering on the plane ride over to Nepal a little less than 2 years ago. Events in my life had forcibly brought me face to face with some of my least favorite, less talked about qualities. Second semester, second year, I was working on a group project. And I'm sure you've all worked with someone similar, the girl who wants to control everything and boss everyone around and shows up late to the group meeting without their part done. That was me. Apparently, I got so bad, a classmate from a different group felt the need to reach out to me privately to inform me that my behavior was that of a bully's. It was a word that reappeared on the peer reviews I received at the end of the project. This was horrible news, especially considering it piggybacked off the recent discovery that my super cute crush had called me super gross. Apparently, telling everyone you know you like a guy and interacting with them only when your alcohol intake is at a level where anything said is regrettable. It's not the best way to succeed at wooing the guy you like. So it seems easy now to spot the errors of my ways, and perhaps it always was, but it wasn't always for me. Because examining the reasons I did things meant acknowledging that my reasons were, well, shitty reasons. I would show up late to the group meeting without my part of the project done because I wanted to see the boy I liked so we could talk and we could dance and we could fall in love and blah, 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 blah. And I was crushed when I realized the kindness I preached to others to practice was something I myself was unable to extend to my peers. And being called super gross by my crush at the same time just sort of seemed to invalidate my inadequacies. So I had to come to the idea that there was another decision that maybe I could have made. I have up on the slide behind me a game I'm sure you're all familiar with. Right? Okay. Now, picture these two options. First option, would you rather get drunk Wednesday to Saturday, show up to your group project, only half of your part completed, hot pics of yourself on Instagram, maybe talk to the boy you like? Or would you rather, option B, go out for a night to dance with your friends after going to the library to responsibly finish your part of the paper, which you will bring to your meeting sober and on time on Sunday? Okay, so the sad thing is, folks, if you had have asked me the Tuesday before my group meeting what option I would have chosen, I would have told you it was option B every single time. And then, come Wednesday by around 4 p.m., I would have went and done the first option every single time. There are times in your life when you make a decision that isn't reflective of who you are. Let's call that decision a mistake. And there are times when people make that decision so consistently that gradually it becomes part of their lifestyle and it is reflective of who they are. I was crushed, I'm repeating this part, when I realized that the kindness I preached to others to practice was something I myself was unable to extend to my peers, and being called super gross by my crush at the same time just seemed to validate my inadequacy. So I wanted to change, half because I wanted to be a better person, and half because I wanted to prove to everyone else that I could be a better person. And because the universe wanted to make the lost little white girl into even more of a cliche, I realized all of this just in time to fly across the world to spend the summer in Nepal finding myself. So, it is here that I must stop and give credit to Renaissance College, the leadership faculty at UNB that nobody knows is a leadership faculty at UNB, for making us so familiar with the process of change. We had a presentation from my prof, Nathan Thompson, during my first semester at RC, after we had missed the mark yet again on our current affairs assignment, in which we were supposed to analyze a recent news article. There was one slide in particular in his presentation that I kept going back to throughout my entire degree. And no, it wasn't because of the Star Trek reference. I didn't get it. He was upset. So this is a process of critical reflection. And basically, you go through this and you ask yourself, what happened? Describe the experience. And then you ask yourself why that happened and how you felt about it. Now, then you're asking yourself, what is the significance of this? Am I looking at it in a different way? And then after you realize that, you go, well, what am I going to do now after having realized all of this. So, flash forward to sad Emma on the plane to Nepal, who was looking back on her life and wincing at the choices she had made and the person they had turned her into. And so she made a list. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. These were the values I wanted to live by, and I knew that it wasn't safe to leave me to my own devices. If I really wanted to become a happier, more fulfilled, compassionate human being, autopilot had to come off. So, an example of the reflection process. In the spirit of practicing humility, I was trying to be less jealous and competitive. I had a year's worth of group projects to go back to, and I could not fail another peer review. So, scene. My dear friend Kathleen and I were volunteering at a care home for Tibetan children, and being useless at pretty much everything else, one of our main tasks was peeling potatoes. Every morning, we peeled potatoes together, and every morning, I made it a competition to see who could peel the potatoes the fastest. I didn't announce it verbally or anything. I would just kind of run into the kitchen in the morning to seize a better peeler so I could viciously attack the outer shell, throwing the perfectly peeled potato in a bowl of soap before grabbing another one from the sink and starting the process over again, and again, and again, for 2 hours straight for almost 2 weeks straight. Cue the reflection process. So, first of all, oh my God, I am really competitive, I've just realized. Second one, wow, this actually contributes really negatively to my surroundings because Kathleen is now scared of me and will not talk to me in the afternoons. Third one, okay, why am I doing that? I really just feel the need to compare myself to her because for some reason I really want to be better than her. Maybe it's because my crush called me super gross, I don't know. Anyways, fourth, now that I know this, I am going to make an active effort to be nicer to Kathleen because she actually is my really good friend and I do not want her to hate me for the rest of my life. Okay, go back. Okay, so, right. Yes, thank you. So, and a week later, it was May 19th, and I was writing in my journal about how fun my chores were becoming. We were listening to music, and how much improved my communication was with Kathleen. And by going through that reflection process after every conversation, every outing with the kids, I was able to pick up on ways that my own behavior contributed negatively to the situation or identified me with a quality that I did not want to be identified with. It's a spoiler alert, but you want to know who uses processes like this? Guys like Elon Musk use this kind of critical reflection process because they don't want to tell themselves nice stories about how their product is the most effective or innovative solution. They want to know it is, and the way they do that is by reassessing constantly what is being done, why it is being done, if it could be done differently, and if doing it differently could make it better. I want to take a second to highlight Elon Musk's use of feedback loop, which is a phrase that came up recently during a philosophy class that I take on evil. My professor, Dr. Jennifer Weed, used the phrase feedback loop to describe German philosopher Fackenheim's argument against the defense used by many Nazi war criminals who stood on trial after the war. Excuses range from, we didn't have a choice, to we weren't involved, we were conditioned under the totalitarian system we lived under, and thus we should not be held responsible. Fackenheim did not buy this argument. He said that in choosing to be blind, in yielding to the way things were, the Germans were contributing to the totalitarian system they lived under, keeping it operating through their actions or inactions. Yes, so Fackenheim described this feedback loop as a circular thought movement, and he used it to prove that Adolf Eichmann was more than a cog in the wheel, that he was responsible for his deeds, however banal some might believe Eichmann to be. For those of you unfamiliar, Adolf Eichmann is the Nazi member who is said, near the end of the war, to have expressed how he would leap laughing into the grave because the feeling that he had 5 million people on his conscience would be, for him, one of extraordinary satisfaction. head of the Office of Jewish Affairs during his prime time in the SS. Adolf Eichmann was the subject of Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil. She's a German journalist, and she wrote this book after covering his 1962 trial in Jerusalem for The New Yorker. According to Arendt, in her book, Arendt diagnoses Eichmann as a cog in the wheel due to his lack of remorse and seeming inability to reflect. According to Arendt, Eichmann's case wasn't one of moral insanity. He wasn't a fanatical anti-Semite, and in fact, one of the hardest truths for the judges of his trial to grasp, if they ever did, was that a normal, average person, neither feeble-minded, nor indoctrinated, nor cynical, could be utterly incapable of telling right from wrong. Eichmann wasn't clever or calculating. He was genuinely incapable of speaking in anything but cliches, Arendt said. Some of the comedy could not be translated into English because it lied in Eichmann's struggle against the German language, which invariably defeated him. All this to say, Eichmann wasn't a mastermind of the final solution. He was lobbying to solve the Jewish problem by sending them overseas to start a new colony in Madagascar, for heaven's sake. Okay. So, the concern expressed by Arendt and others at the trial was that once the final solution was implemented, there was little resistance by those ordered to carry it out, including Eichmann. Arendt said that this was because Eichmann was banal. He couldn't speak because he couldn't think. And as a result, he was surrounded by the most reliable of all safeguards, namely from the words and presence of others, and thus from reality as such. But surely, if Eichmann had taken a minute to reflect, he would have come to the conclusion that killing is wrong, an evil act. But he didn't do this, Arendt argued, because of his inability to reflect. Eichmann went along with the crowd, just as I went along with the crowd of partygoers. Every weekend, I chose to go out instead of doing my group project. Eichmann followed the will of the Third Reich, just as I allowed my friends to convince me to go to ladies' night for the 4th week in a row. So, can we agree that taking the time to reflect on a situation could provide some important insight? Elon Musk looked at traffic in LA and he called it soul-sucking. Now, as a side project, he's building a 3D network of tunnels underneath LA to alleviate congestion. Expensive to build tunnels? Cut the diameter in half and cut the price. But what about flying cars? Well, Musk points out that a bunch of flying machines zooming above your head would produce a lot of wind and do little to create an anxiety-reducing situation. Elon Musk put transportation in his feedback loop and saw how it could be better. I put my interpersonal interactions into a feedback loop and saw how I could be better. And this is where the story of Eichmann loops back around. Because you could look at yourself and not see anything wrong with your actions, or you could look at a situation and find no conceivable way of making it better. My advice to you when that occurs is to look harder, more honestly. Towards the end of my degree, I decided it would be a great idea to come back and get another degree in engineering. I had been doing my honors thesis in international development studies at the time, and I had been examining the water supply system of Nepal's capital city for so long, and after seeing the effects of it firsthand the summer before, I just almost felt like I had to be an engineer to do my part and to give back. So I went back, and then I hated it. I forgot that I had forgotten everything I ever learned about math, and that I couldn't take the time to relearn it all when I worked 2 jobs, run a club, volunteer, and had 3 labs. And at first, that was hard for me to admit, because I felt like it was admitting that I wasn't smart enough to get an Eng degree. After my 3rd breakdown in the 2nd week, I asked myself, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And is your why worth all the tears that are inevitable to your future if you continue down this path? Proving to a bunch of, proving to a unknown mass of they that I was smart enough to get an Eng degree wasn't a good enough reason for me. So I switched out. And I endured the 8 months of fumbling over what I was studying or why I was still in school, because it was better to admit that I was wrong about wanting to be an engineer than it was to spend 4 years miserable in head hall trying to prove that I wasn't. Okay. And now I'm going to talk about how this is a part where Fackenheim felt Arendt missed the argument. Eichmann was placed in a system where he was ordered to do deeds that should have made him cry, but he didn't, Arendt argued, which she said was due to his lack of reflection. Fackenheim says, but what if it wasn't all about his lack of reflection? Maybe his desire to be a somebody was so great that he was unwilling to look too hard into what was being sacrificed to give him that feeling. Fackenheim found flaw with Eichmann because Eichmann did not think what was most in need of being thought. Although in the case of Eichmann, yielding to external realities was not the best choice and was credited to not reflecting, there are less morally trying times when sometimes the only thing you can do is yield, like the case with my crush. Being okay with my crush not liking me back was the first step in accepting that I wasn't super gross. Holding on to the reality of us being together required him having an opinion of me that he wasn't obligated to have, and it required putting my self-worth in the control of someone else's hands, which it should never be. So I stopped in a really roller coaster kind of way, with the help of friends, family, books, pens, and strangers on the internet. But I did it myself because in the end, every decision made was a decision I made to move forward. Pick up a journal, go for a walk, reflect on your life, your work, those around you. Practice perspective through a book, a conversation, a trip to Nepal. Use this awareness and knowledge to propel yourself forward. But don't be fooled into thinking that it is a linear process. It is easy to forget the revelations that you've made and the new habits that you've acquired. And when you do remember, it honestly really feels like you only go backwards. But I promise, it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, the thing that keeps me moving forward, no matter how difficult it is to accept that I might never get over fighting my flaws or ever be the perfect individual I want to be, is by looking at all the beautiful people in my life, how they accept themselves and fight against their own flaws. And I feel inspired to do the same. See something about yourself that you don't like, change it. See something about yourself that you do like, love it, and let it go. Let it grow. You don't have to go to Nepal to find yourself, folks. Thank you so much for letting me give this talk to you. Have a good day.